The billionaire architect's towers fell. But everything changed when a single mom engineer returned with the plans. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The city had made him. Now it watched him break. Ethan Caldwell stood 60 floors above Manhattan, glass cold against his palms, and tried to remember how breathing worked. Below, emergency lights strobed around the Meridian spire, red, then dark, then red again, painting his reflection in syncopated rhythm. Police barricades ringed 3 full blocks, news vans multiplied like cells dividing. His tower, the one that won awards and launched Meridian development into Fortune 500 territory, stood dark except for those emergency lights, abandoned mid-afternoon like a ship the rats knew to leave. The cracks had appeared at 9:47 that morning. Hairline fractures in the lower support columns, someone said. Structural engineers evacuated the building by noon. Now it was 6:15 p.m. and the sun bled orange across the skyline he'd spent 20 years building, and Ethan understood with perfect clarity that everything was ending. His hands left fog prints on the glass when he finally stepped back. On his desk, 2 reports. The first, 17 pages, still warm from the printer. This morning's disaster analysis. Foundation instability confirmed. Load-bearing calculations off by margins too significant to ignore. Critical structural failure imminent. The language was clinical. The meaning was apocalyptic. Ethan had read it 4 times, each pass hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something survivable. The second report was older, cream-colored paper gone ivory at the edges, staple rusting in the corner. 5 years and 3 months old, dated October 2020. The cover bore a red stamp that had bled through 3 pages. Rejected. Below that, a signature. Claire Whitmore, P.E. He'd forgotten how precise her handwriting was. Engineer's script, every letter the same height, numbers that couldn't be mistaken for anything else. Her name looked carved rather than written. Ethan sat down slowly, the way people sit when their legs stop being trustworthy. 5 years ago, Claire Whitmore had given him this report. 40 pages of structural analysis, stress calculations, failure scenarios mapped with the kind of detail that suggested she'd imagined the disaster in slow motion, frame by frame. She'd predicted the foundation imbalance, the load miscalculations, even the timeline. Critical failure between 5 and 7 years post-completion. They were at year 5, month 3. Every warning she'd written was coming true outside his window. His phone buzzed, then buzzed again. 17 unread texts. The mayor's office calling. Again. His board demanding statements. His publicist crafting language about unforeseen circumstances and comprehensive reviews. Ethan silenced it all. In the quiet, he could hear his own pulse. Could hear the air conditioning cycling, could hear very faintly sirens from street level. He opened Claire's report. Her handwriting filled the margins, notes to herself, calculations double-checked, reminders flagged with asterisks. On page 12, beside a diagram of foundation stress distribution, she'd written, "This matters," underlined twice. On page 37, next to her conclusion, "If you push it this far, it won't hold." He remembered that meeting. Late afternoon in this same office, Claire standing at this same window with rolled blueprints under her arm. She'd worn a gray blazer and practical boots, her dark hair pulled back, face serious. She was 30 then, just 5 years past her doctorate, smart enough to scare the senior engineers. She'd laid the report on his desk with both hands, careful not to let the pages scatter. "Mr. Caldwell, We need to discuss the Meridian Foundation design. He'd been reviewing a different project, something about a convention center in Boston. Deadline pressure, budget overruns, the usual chaos. He'd glanced at her report, seen the page count, felt his jaw tighten. How bad? Bad enough that I'm putting it in writing. The load distribution won't hold past 7 years, not with the current foundation design. We need complete redesign before we pour. We're already 3 months behind schedule. I understand, but the math doesn't compromise. He'd read her executive summary standing up, 30 seconds of scanning. Then he'd looked at her, this young engineer who'd been with the firm for 18 months, who'd never built anything taller than 12 stories, who was telling him his signature project was fundamentally flawed. This is too cautious, Claire. These safety margins, they're excessive. They're necessary. They'll add 8 months and $15 million to the budget. They'll keep the building standing. Her voice had stayed level, calm, like she was explaining gravity to someone who'd temporarily forgotten physics. That calm had irritated him more than shouting would have. I'll have the senior team review it. I am the senior structural engineer on this project. Then find another way. Adjust your assumptions. This, he'd tapped the report, is alarmist. She'd stood there for 3 long seconds, face unreadable. Then she'd picked up the report, held it against her chest like armor. Dr. Caldwell, if you push the foundation design this far, it won't hold. That's not caution. That's physics. He'd smiled then, professional, dismissive. The smile he used on people who didn't understand how buildings actually got built. Thank you for your diligence. I'll take it under advisement. She'd left without another word. 2 weeks later, she'd submitted an addendum. 40 additional pages, more calculations, failure probability analyses, stress maps under various load scenarios. He'd stamped it rejected himself, red ink, deliberate and final, and sent it back through interoffice mail. 3 days after that, Claire Whitmore had resigned. No exit interview, no forwarding address. Her desk cleaned out overnight. Her company phone returned to HR in a manila envelope with no note. She'd vanished, like a person who understood exactly how much her voice mattered in rooms where money talked louder than mathematics. And Ethan had kept building. The Meridian spire rose floor by floor, steel and glass and concrete exactly according to the accelerated schedule that kept investors happy. It topped out 16 months later. Ribbon cutting on a perfect May morning. The mayor spoke about innovation and vision. Ethan's photo made the front page of the Times real estate section. The man who raised Manhattan. He'd framed that article. It was still hanging 20 feet behind him, above the conference table. Now, 5 years later, he turned Claire's report over in his hands. The pages felt fragile, paper thinning at the creases where she'd folded it, unfolded it, folded it again during her analysis. On the final page, her professional engineer's seal, signed and dated, October 19th, 2020. Below that, in her careful script, I've done my professional duty. The rest is your choice. His phone lit up again. His assistant, Rachel, loyal to a fault, still here at 6:30 when everyone else had fled for plausible deniability. She knocked twice, didn't wait for permission. That's how he knew it was bad. Sir, the mayor's office is calling again. Channel 7 is running it as the lead story. They're using words like criminal negligence and systemic failure. The board wants to convene an emergency meeting and... She stopped, looked at the old report open on his desk, at the way his hands had gone still on the pages. And? Ethan asked. and everyone wants to know if you're going to make a statement. He thought about statements, about careful language and legal liability and preserving what remained of Meridian development, about the 53 employees whose jobs depended on his response, about the investors, the contracts, the empire he'd built from nerve and hunger and the absolute certainty that moving fast and breaking things was how you won. Then he thought about Claire Whitmore's voice. If you push it this far, it won't hold. Find her, he said. Rachel blinked. Sir? Claire Whitmore. I need her. She left the industry 5 years ago. Nobody knows. Then find someone who can track her down. Private investigator, whatever it costs. He closed the report and looked up. I need her, Rachel, not her calculations. Her. I need her to tell me whether anything is salvageable. Rachel's expression flickered between confusion and something that might have been pity. I'll make calls. She left. The door closed with a whisper of hydraulics. Ethan turned back to the window. The Meridian spire stood dark against the dying light, emergency strobes still painting it red, sirens still echoing from street level. He could see people gathered at the barricades, phones raised, filming his failure for social media. He picked up Claire's report one more time, ran his fingers over her marginal notes, the places where her pen had pressed hard enough to emboss the paper. This matters. Check calculations, page 17. Foundation redesign, non-negotiable. 5 years ago, she'd been right. 5 years ago, he'd been too arrogant to listen. Now his tower was failing exactly how she'd predicted, and Claire Whitmore was gone. And Ethan Caldwell, who'd built skylines and won awards and believed control was safety, felt something he hadn't experienced since childhood, when the world was big and dangerous and beyond his power to fix. Regret. And beneath that, smaller but dangerous, hope. Hope that the woman he'd silenced might still answer when he called. Hope that some structures, once broken, could still be repaired. The last sunlight left his office. The emergency lights continued their rhythm, red, then dark, then red. His reflection in the glass looked like a stranger. Ethan closed Claire's report, held it against his chest the way she'd held it 5 years ago, and made himself a promise. If she agreed to see him, he would listen this time. If she told him the tower couldn't be saved, he would believe her. If she told him he couldn't be saved, he would accept that too. But first, he had to find her, and hope that 5 years hadn't made her wisdom into something harder than forgiveness. Marcus Chen took the job because $300 per hour plus expenses bought a lot of silence about questions he didn't ask. The case file was thin. Claire Whitmore, 35, former structural engineer. Last known address, Brooklyn. Employment history ending 5 years ago like someone had drawn a line through her life with permanent marker. She doesn't want to be found, Marcus told Ethan over coffee in a diner that smelled like grease and yesterday's desperation. People who disappear this clean usually have good reasons. Find her anyway. Marcus studied him. This billionaire with shadows under his eyes, wearing a suit that cost more than Marcus's car but looking somehow smaller than his photographs. Desperate men made bad decisions. Desperate men with money made expensive bad decisions. Cash up front. No guarantees. Ethan slid an envelope across the table. 10,000 in hundreds. It took Marcus 6 days. Turns out people leave traces even when they try not to. A professional engineering license canceled but not fully purged from state databases. A forwarding address on file with MIT alumni relations, outdated but pointing north. Property tax records in coastal Maine showing a Claire A. Whitmore, sole owner, mortgage paid off 3 years ago. The file Marcus compiled was thorough. Harborview Road, Wellsport, Maine, population 2,847. Gray Cape Cod with cedar shakes and a barn converted to office space. Employment with Green Foundations Consultancy out of Vermont, reviewing residential projects and historic renovations. Annual income, approximately $62,000. No marriage license. One dependent, Lucy Whitmore, age 7, enrolled at Wellsport Elementary. The surveillance photos made Ethan's chest tighten. Claire carrying groceries up her front steps, hair pulled into a practical ponytail, jeans and a flannel shirt, work boots tracking mud. Older than he remembered. Tired in a way that looked permanent. But her posture was the same. Shoulders back, head up, the bearing of someone who'd stopped apologizing for taking up space. The second photo showed Lucy, gap-toothed smile, backpack covered in stickers. E equals MC squared, a bridge diagram, a cartoon hard hat. She was pushing herself on a tire swing, legs pumping, hair flying. She had Claire's serious eyes. The third photo showed Claire's barn office taken from the road. Through the window, drafting tables, blueprints pinned to walls. The infrastructure of someone still building things, just smaller now. Quieter. Marcus's notes mentioned that Claire walked Lucy to school every morning at 8:15, picked her up at 3:15, never missed a day. That she bought groceries on Thursdays. That her truck, a 15-year-old Ford with primer patches, needed a new transmission, but she kept driving it anyway. That she'd built a life in Wellsport that looked nothing like Manhattan, but seemed, in the photographs, solid. Ethan booked a rental car, told his board he was taking personal time. Rachel asked if she should call ahead. No, Ethan said, looking at the photo of Claire on her porch, arms full of groceries, face set in concentration. She won't say yes on the phone. The drive north took 7 hours. Time enough to rehearse what he'd say. Time enough to realize no speech would be adequate. Time enough to watch the landscape change from glass and concrete to pine trees and stone walls, from the empire he'd built to the refuge she'd found. He arrived on a Thursday morning in October, rain hammering his rental sedan's windshield hard enough to test the wipers. Wellsport appeared through the weather like something half-dreamed. Harbor boats rocking at their moorings, Main Street with its brick storefronts, library, post office, the functional infrastructure of a town that had outlasted its glory days and settled into something more honest. Harborview Road curved along the coast. Claire's house sat back from the water, sheltered by spruce trees that had probably been planted when the house was new, 60 years ago. The gray paint was peeling near the foundation. The cedar shake roof needed replacing. A basketball hoop rusted beside the driveway. Her truck was there. Lights on in the barn. Ethan sat in his car for 5 full minutes, engine running, heat fogging the windows. Then he turned off the ignition and walked through rain that soaked through his coat in seconds. He knocked 3 times. The door opened. Claire stood there in jeans and a sweatshirt that said, Maine, in faded letters. Her face went blank for exactly 2 seconds. Then recognition arrived like winter. No. The word came out flat, final, a door closing. Ethan had prepared a speech, 43 sentences about needing her expertise, about the investigation, about people at risk, about how he'd been wrong and she'd been right, and please, please help him fix this. He opened his mouth. No, Claire said again. Whatever you're about to say, the answer is no. Claire, you destroyed my career. Her voice never rose, never shook. Each word arrived with the precision of her calculations, measured and unarguable. You called my work alarmist in front of investors. You told the building commission I didn't understand real-world constraints. You made me a cautionary tale about engineers who couldn't handle pressure. Behind her, movement. A child appeared in the hallway. Lucy, backpack already on, dark eyes watching with the careful attention of kids who've learned that adult conversations contain important data. Claire's hand tightened on the doorframe. Some protective instinct made visible. I warned you exactly what would happen, she continued. I gave you the math. I gave you the timeline. I gave you solutions. You chose to build it anyway because the schedule mattered more than the structure. She paused. Now you're here because I was right, and you need me to fix what you broke. Rain dripped from Ethan's collar. His $1,000 shoes were soaked through, leather probably ruined. He felt ridiculous standing on her porch. This man who'd flown first class and stayed in penthouses now dripping on her welcome mat like a door-to-door salesman. I know I can't. You can't, Claire agreed. She stepped back, hand moving to close the door. Whatever you think you can offer, whatever you think you can say, it won't change what happened. I have a life here, a good life. I don't need your money or your apologies or your crisis. Please. The word cost him something visible, something that made his voice crack on the single syllable. Claire paused. Her hand stayed on the doorknob, but she didn't close it. Behind her, Lucy watched with those serious eyes. I have nothing to say to you that I didn't say 5 years ago, Claire said quietly. You should have listened then. The door closed. The lock turned with a sound like finality. Ethan stood on her porch for 3 full minutes, rain running down his face, breath visible in the October cold. Through the window he could see Claire moving through her house, the solid reality of a life that had nothing to do with him, that didn't need him, that had survived his damage and built something new. He walked back to his car and sat there until the windows fogged over and the rain turned the world into abstract watercolor. Then he drove to Portland, found a hotel, and stared at the ceiling until morning came. He returned the next day with an envelope. Inside, a cashier's check for $2 million made out to Claire Whitmore. A written statement, signed and notarized, accepting full responsibility for ignoring her analysis. A promise to clear her name publicly, to restore her professional reputation, to fund her consultancy for 5 years, no strings attached. Everything he could think of that might translate regret into something tangible. She met him in the driveway this time, wouldn't let him near the house, stood between him and her front door like a sentry, arms crossed, jaw set. He held out the envelope. She didn't take it. You think this is about money? Her laugh sounded like glass breaking on concrete, bright and sharp and wrong. You think you can buy back trust? Buy back the 3 years I spent rebuilding from nothing? Buy back every interview where they asked why I overreacted to standard engineering challenges? She shook her head. You think you can purchase your way out of consequence? She was wearing the same work boots from yesterday, jeans stained with sawdust, flannel shirt frayed at the cuffs. Behind her, through the barn's open door, he glimpsed drafting tables covered in blueprints for deck reinforcements and residential additions. The work of someone who used to design buildings that touched clouds, now measuring success in square feet and satisfied small-town clients. I made mistakes, Ethan said. Mistakes are math errors, Claire answered. Her voice stayed level, but something burned underneath. 5 years of anger kept at a careful simmer. Mistakes are transposed numbers or forgotten decimals. What you did was choose profit over safety and arrogance over evidence. Those are character flaws, not calculation problems. She turned toward the barn. Don't come back. Lucy's already asking questions I don't want to answer. What kind of questions? Claire stopped, looked back at him. She wants to know if you're the man who made my building fall down. That's how she asked it. The man who made your building fall down, because she's 7, and that's how 7-year-olds understand betrayal. What did you tell her? I told her that sometimes people care more about being right than doing right, that sometimes smart people make stupid choices, that we don't always get second chances to fix what we break. Claire's voice softened slightly. Then she asked if you were sorry. What did you say? I said I didn't know. That sorry is easy to say and hard to mean. She walked toward the barn without looking back. Claire. She paused at the threshold but didn't turn. I am sorry. For what it's worth. It's worth exactly what it's always been worth, she said. Nothing that holds weight. The barn door closed behind her. Ethan stood in her driveway holding an envelope that might as well have been empty. Rain began again, light this time, blurring the ink on the check through the envelope's window. He got back in his car, started the engine, put it in reverse. Then he saw it. The Hutchins barn, 300 yards down the road, for rent sign, weathered but still legible. He wrote down the number. The realtor was a woman named Diane, who'd lived in Wellsport her whole life and had opinions about everything. She showed him the barn on a Saturday afternoon, talking the entire time about the previous tenant's goats and the good bones of the structure and how unusual it was for someone from away to rent property in October. Most folks rent in summer, she said, unlocking the door, trying to capture that coastal Maine fantasy. Come winter, they remember why locals stay locals. The barn smelled like wood and time. Post and beam oak frame, solid. Electrical, upgraded maybe 10 years ago. Enough insulation to work through winter if you didn't mind layering. Windows facing west caught afternoon light. It's perfect, Ethan said. Diane looked at him like he might be simple. It's a barn. That's what I need. Most folks need houses. Most folks aren't me. She shrugged, made him sign a 6-month lease at $1,200 per month, handed over keys that probably dated to before she was born. You know Claire Whitmore lives just down the road, she mentioned casually. Too casually. Ethan met her eyes. I do. She's good people, keeps to herself, takes care of her kid, does honest work. I know. You planning on being trouble? I'm planning on being quiet. Diane considered this. See that you do. This town looks after its own. After she left, Ethan stood in the empty barn and tried to imagine what came next. He called a rental company, arranged for a truck, called contractors about internet installation, made lists. Then he called Rachel. I need everything sent to Maine, he said. The Meridian files, all of them, digital and hard copies. Sir, the board doesn't need to know. This is personal time, remember? Silence on the line. Then, the furniture? Just a desk, monitors, office supplies. He looked around the bare space. And a good coffee maker. Ethan, Rachel's voice went soft. What are you doing? Trying to prove something. To who? He thought about Claire's voice. Sorry is easy to say and hard to mean. To someone who stopped believing in second chances. The furniture arrived on Tuesday. By Wednesday, he'd set up a workspace that looked almost professional. Standing desk, dual monitors, printer, file boxes of Meridian documentation stacked with military precision. The coffee maker looked absurd in the corner, gleaming chrome against weathered wood, but it made coffee that didn't taste like regret. Thursday morning, he saw Claire's truck drive past. She slowed, didn't stop. but her head turned. She saw his rental car parked outside, saw the lights on in the barn. She kept driving. Friday, she drove past again. This time, she stopped across the road, sat there for 30 seconds, engine running, just looking at his barn. Then she drove away. Saturday, Ethan walked past her property at dusk. Not close enough to be threatening, just a walk. Exercise. The kind of thing people do in small towns where everyone walks and no one thinks twice about it. Her barn office glowed warm in the falling dark. Through the window, he saw her bent over drafting tables, red pencil moving with that same precise confidence he remembered. He didn't knock, didn't wave, just kept walking. Sunday, he found a note tucked under his windshield wiper. "You're wasting your time." Her handwriting, engineer's script, every letter exactly the same height. He took the note inside, pinned it above his desk. Proof she'd noticed, proof she cared enough to tell him to leave, proof she still measured things, even his presence. Monday morning, he made coffee and started working through foundation calculations he should have trusted her to solve 5 years ago. Tuesday, he walked past her house again at dusk. Wednesday, the lights in her barn stayed on past midnight. Thursday, he didn't walk past. Gave her space. Proved he could recognize boundaries. Friday, he did walk past. She was outside, loading tools into her truck. She saw him, her hands stilled on the toolbox. Their eyes met across 50 yards of darkening grass. Neither waved, but neither looked away. Saturday marked 2 weeks. He'd established a routine. Coffee at sunrise, 8 hours reviewing structural data, evening walks that happened to take him past her property. He wasn't hiding his presence, but he wasn't forcing it either. Just existing in her orbit, proving through stubborn presence that he understood the only language she might eventually respect. Commitment that cost something. Sunday evening, day 18, she walked past his barn. He was inside working late, 3 tables covered in calculations and revised foundation specs. She slowed at his window, stopped, looked in. Their eyes met through the glass. She didn't come in, but she looked. And looking, he'd learned, was progress measured in millimeters. Right now, millimeters mattered. The collaboration started the way glaciers move. Slowly, then all at once without fanfare. First, Claire left structural calculations on his doorstep. No note, just corrections to his foundation redesigns marked in red pencil. Her handwriting in the margins. Load path incorrect. Try again. He implemented them, left the updated plans in her mailbox at 6 a.m. before she'd wake for coffee. She returned them the next morning. More notes. Check column B7. Dead load assumption wrong. This went on for 2 weeks. Anonymous collaboration through paper trails and early morning exchanges. Math speaking to math. Slowly, his redesigns improved. Slowly, her corrections became shorter. Then his printer died mid-report. The document was due to city investigators in 6 hours. The nearest print shop was in Portland, 40 minutes away. Her barn light was on. 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. He knocked. She opened the door holding a mug of tea, steam rising into cold air. Considered him for 15 long seconds. 5 minutes, she said finally. Don't touch anything. Inside her workspace was military precise. Blueprints organized by date, calculation notebooks stacked chronologically, reference books alphabetized by author. A corkboard dominated one wall, covered in Lucy's drawings of bridges and towers, structural diagrams rendered in crayon and colored pencil, each one labeled in careful 7-year-old handwriting with load estimates and span measurements. Bridge over Harbor Road, one was titled. Max load, 2 cars plus 4 people. Support beams, 6. Safety margin, 40%. Claire followed his gaze. She wants to be an engineer. she comes by it honestly. Claire's expression didn't soften, but it didn't harden either. Progress. She printed his document without speaking, 23 pages, collated, stapled, handed it over. Thank you. He started to leave. Column B7, Claire said. He turned. You're still calculating dead load wrong. The facade weight isn't distributed evenly. It concentrates at the corner mounts. You're treating it like a continuous load when it's actually point loads spaced at 16 feet. She pulled up his file on her screen, highlighted the error in 3 quick clicks. Her fingers moved like someone who'd taught software to obey. See? This concentration creates lateral thrust. The foundation has to resist moment forces, not just vertical compression. Ethan moved closer, studied the screen. She was right. Of course she was right. If I adjust the footing width here, then you unbalance the opposite corner. It's a system. You can't modify one element without addressing the whole structure. They spent 90 minutes reviewing the calculation. Claire's voice lost its careful guardedness when she talked about load paths and force distribution. This was her native language. In this territory, she was undisputed expert, and her confidence was beautiful to watch. Lucy appeared once, pajama-clad, watching from the stairs, small face, serious. Is that the building that fell down? She asked. Claire's jaw tightened. Go back to bed, sweetheart. Did Mom fix it? Lucy asked Ethan directly. He met the child's eyes. 7 years old enough to understand that adults fail. She's trying to, he said carefully. I made mistakes. Big ones. Your mom's helping me figure out what can be saved. Lucy considered this, nodded once, satisfied by honesty. Okay. Night, Mom. She retreated upstairs, small feet padding on wood floors. The silence after was different. Not comfortable, but less armed. Like they'd both passed some test administered by a 7-year-old with a crayon bridge. Same time tomorrow? Claire asked. It wasn't quite a question, more like a structural requirement, inevitable as gravity. I'll bring better calculations, Ethan said. Their late-night work sessions became routine. Claire would finish her consultancy work at 8 p.m., make tea, unlock her barn door. Ethan would arrive 5 minutes later with his laptop and questions. They'd work until midnight, sometimes later, mapping solutions to a disaster 5 years in the making. 6 weeks in, they had an answer. The structural flaw could be fixed. $30 million in retrofitting, 18 months of construction, complete occupancy shutdown, major reinforcement of the foundation, redistribution of loads, replacement of corner columns. But only if Ethan publicly admitted his error before the city's engineering review board. Claire insisted on full honesty, complete transparency, releasing her original rejected report, acknowledging he'd ignored explicit warnings, accepting personal liability for construction decisions that prioritized schedule over safety. It's career suicide, his lawyer said on speakerphone, voice crackling through distance. Lawsuits will name you personally. Your insurance won't cover intentional negligence. The board will strip you of authority. You'll never build in this city again. They were in Claire's barn, late November, heating barely keeping pace with cold seeping through old wood. The phone sat on the desk between them, its speaker glowing like a tiny campfire. Claire was marking up the retrofit proposal with her red pencil, each note precise, each correction uncompromising. The math only works if the foundation accepts it was wrong, she said without looking up. Strana structures and reputations. Same principle. Ethan wanted to argue, to find another way, to protect what remained of Meridian development, the employees, the contracts, the legacy he'd spent 20 years building. His hand moved toward the phone, toward ending the call. toward telling his lawyer they'd find a legal strategy that didn't incinerate everything. Claire finally looked at him, pencil still, face unreadable. 5 years ago, you had a choice between truth and money. You chose money. People could have died. She went back to her calculations. This is the same choice. Different price tag. Same test. Outside, November wind shook the barn's frame. His phone showed 43 unread messages, board members demanding updates, investors wanting reassurance, his publicist crafting defensive statements that blamed consultants and contractors and everyone except Ethan. Lucy's bridge drawings stared at him from the corkboard. Careful arches labeled load-bearing, structures designed to connect things that fell apart. He looked at Claire, at her hands marking calculations, at the life she'd rebuilt from rubble. "Ethan?" His lawyer's voice tinny through the speaker. "You still there?" "Prepare a full disclosure statement," Ethan said. Silence on the phone. Then, "I need to make sure you understand." "I understand. Draft the statement. Include everything, every warning I ignored, every decision I made that cost safety for schedule. Everything." More silence. Then, "This might destroy you." "I know." He ended the call. Claire's pencil hadn't stopped moving, but something in her shoulders had relaxed, some tension released. "Ethan," she said quietly, "this might not save you." "I know." He met her eyes. "But maybe it saves someone else. Maybe it means the next engineer who walks into a meeting with warnings doesn't get called alarmist. Maybe it means somebody listens before the building falls." Claire set down her pencil, reached across the desk, took his hand. Her fingers were warm, calloused from drafting and fieldwork. Real. "Whatever happens," she said, "you did the right thing. Finally. Better late than never." Outside, wind kept blowing. Inside, they sat together in the warmth of honest work, hands linked across calculations that might yet save something worth saving, even if that something was only his humanity. The leak happened on a Wednesday. New York Times headline, morning edition, above the fold, "Disgraced developer seeks help from woman he silenced." The story broke at 6:47 a.m. By 9 a.m., it had 30,000 shares. By noon, reporters had found Wellsport. Ethan saw them first. Satellite trucks parking on Harborview Road, camera crews setting up on the public easement across from Claire's house, a correspondent doing a stand-up, perfect hair immobile in ocean wind. Sources say Ethan Caldwell has been renting a barn near Whitmore's residence for 6 weeks, leading to speculation about the nature of their relationship. He called Claire immediately. "I'm seeing them," she said. Her voice was tight. "I'm watching them from my window right now." "I didn't leak anything." "I know." Pause. "That doesn't fix this." At 2:30 p.m., Lucy got off the school bus. Photographers immediately surrounded her, cameras clicking, voices shouting questions. "Lucy, is your mom helping the man from New York? Are you friends with Mr. Caldwell? Does your mom have a boyfriend?" Lucy froze on the sidewalk, backpack on her shoulders, eyes wide. Claire appeared from nowhere, moved faster than Ethan knew humans could move, and pulled her daughter through the crowd, got her inside, locked the door. The cameras kept rolling. By evening, social media was making it into entertainment. Comments on the Times article. "Can't believe she's helping him." "Gold digger much?" "She's probably getting paid. It's always about money." Poor kid, having a mom who sells out like that. At 8:15 p.m., Claire walked to Ethan's barn. Didn't knock, just pushed through the door. Her face was pale, eyes bright with rage barely controlled. "You need to leave." Ethan looked up from his laptop, saw her expression, felt his stomach drop. "Claire, now, tonight. Pack your things and go back to Manhattan. Let me help fix this. You can't fix this, her voice cracked. I rebuilt a life here, a safe life, a quiet life where nobody knows my name or cares about my past, where Lucy goes to school and plays with friends and doesn't get photographed like some celebrity's kid. She was shaking, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold something together by force. I told you that bringing you back into my world was dangerous. You promised discretion. You promised. She stopped, breathed. It doesn't matter what you promised. The damage is done. I can make a statement. Tell them to leave you alone. You think that helps? You think that makes it better? Claire laughed, sharp and bitter. You bring chaos wherever you go. I forgot that. Let myself forget because the work was interesting and you seemed different and I wanted to believe. She cut herself off. Lucy came home crying, threw her backpack across the kitchen. Emma's mother shared the article with a comment about me being a gold digger. Emma told Lucy at school. At school, Ethan. She's 7 years old and her classmates' parents are gossiping about whether I'm sleeping with you for money. Ethan stood. I'll kill the story. I'll pay whatever it takes. With what? More money? That's your solution to everything? Throw money at it and hope it disappears? She shook her head. I don't want your money. I want my life back. The one I had before you showed up. She turned toward the door. Go back to Manhattan. Fix your building yourself. Figure out your mess without dragging me into it. She paused at the threshold, back to him. I'm done. The door slammed hard enough to rattle windows. Through the glass, Ethan watched her cross the field, barn lights spilling across frozen grass. Her shoulders were hunched, arms still wrapped around herself. His phone buzzed, his publicist asking for comment. He typed, no comment, leaving Maine. Then deleted it. Called his lawyer instead. I need to kill this story, he said. How? You can't kill a story that's already out. Then change it, redirect it, give them something else to chase. Like what? Ethan looked at the files on his desk, the Meridian documents, the evidence of negligence and fraud and decisions that nearly killed people. Like the truth, he said. All of it. Everything we've found. Sterling's falsified approvals, my negligence, the complete timeline. Release it all. That makes things worse for you. I know, but it changes the story from billionaire chases woman to developer admits fault. It gives reporters something else to write about. His lawyer was quiet for a long moment. This doesn't protect Claire. Not completely. No, but it might redirect attention, make the story about my failure instead of her life. Ethan, once you release this, there's no taking it back. Good. He hung up, started drafting an email to his board. Effective immediately, he was resigning, surrendering equity, waiving severance. He'd serve as long as they needed during transition, but his position as CEO was over. He sent it at 9:43 p.m. At 10:15 p.m., he called the city's chief building inspector. Sarah Chen answered on the third ring, voice suspicious. Mr. Caldwell, it's late. I need to meet with you tomorrow. I have documents to turn over. What kind of documents? Everything. 5 years of internal Meridian files. Emails showing we ignored safety warnings. Board meeting minutes where cost savings overruled engineering concerns. Falsified approval chains. All of it. Silence. Then, are you represented by counsel? Not for this. You should be. Probably. But I'm not. More silence. Then, my office. 2 p.m. tomorrow. She hung up. Ethan sat in the dark barn, listening to wind, and tried to imagine what came next. Prison, possibly. Lawsuits, certainly. The complete annihilation of everything he'd built. But maybe Maybe Claire could have her quiet life back. Maybe Lucy could go to school without cameras. Maybe that was worth whatever came next. Outside, her barn light went dark. The field between them disappeared into night. He worked until dawn, organizing files, preparing documentation, making sure everything was labeled and cross-referenced and impossible to misinterpret. Then he drove to Portland for his meeting with Sarah Chen, and hoped that burning his life down might somehow protect hers. Sarah Chen's office smelled like burnt coffee and photocopier toner. Municipal building, 3rd floor, window view of a parking garage. She was 60, maybe, with gray hair pulled back and eyes that had seen every kind of lie developers told. Ethan arrived at 1:55 p.m. with 2 boxes of documents. She watched him set them on her desk. "This is everything?" she asked. "Everything I have. Digital files are on these thumb drives. Hard copies cross-referenced by date, email chains, board minutes, engineering reports, including Claire Whitmore's original analysis that we rejected." Sarah pulled out the first file, started reading. Ethan sat across from her and waited. She read for 40 minutes without speaking. Occasionally, she'd stop, mark something with a pen, continue. Her expression never changed. Finally, she looked up. "Mr. Caldwell, you understand this exposes you to personal liability?" "Yes." "Criminal charges are possible, negligence at minimum, depending on what else we find, potentially fraud." "I understand." "Your insurance won't cover intentional acts." "I know." She leaned back in her chair, studied him. "Why now?" Ethan thought about Lucy crying in her mother's arms, about Claire's voice. "You bring chaos wherever you go." "Because someone showed me what integrity looks like," he said, "and I finally decided to try it." Sarah's expression softened slightly, the first crack in her professional armor. "You're going to lose everything." "I already did. 5 years ago when I rejected Claire Whitmore's report. I just didn't know it yet." He gestured at the boxes. "This is me admitting it." She nodded slowly. "I'll need time to review these files, coordinate with the district attorney, build a case." "Take whatever time you need." "Don't leave the state." "I'll be in Maine. I rented a barn in Wellsport." Her eyebrows rose. "Near Ms. Whitmore?" "Yes." "That's complicated." "Everything about this is complicated." Sarah stood, extended her hand. "Mr. Caldwell, I've been doing this job for 30 years. I've seen a lot of men in your position make a lot of choices. Most of them choose lawyers and silence." She shook his hand firmly. "Thank you for choosing differently." He left the municipal building and walked out into cold December afternoon. His phone was already ringing. Board members, lawyers, reporters who'd somehow gotten his new number. He silenced it all, drove back to Wellsport through gathering dark. Claire's truck was gone when he passed her house, her barn dark. He went to his own barn, made coffee, and started working on the structural calculations he'd promised to review. Because whatever happened next, the building still needed fixing. And some promises, he'd learned, were worth keeping, even when everything else fell apart. 3 weeks passed before he saw her again. The media circus moved on to newer scandals, a senator's affair, a celebrity divorce. Wellsport returned to its normal rhythm, boats, weather, the slow turning of coastal life. Ethan worked through December mostly alone. His lawyer sent updates. The city was investigating. The DA was reviewing files. Civil suits were being filed. His assets were frozen pending litigation. His reputation was rubble. He'd expected that. What he hadn't expected was the quiet. The way Wellsport absorbed him without judgment. The way Diane, the realtor, waved when she drove past. The way the grocery store clerk didn't ask questions, just bagged his purchases efficiently. The way nobody mentioned the man from Manhattan who'd screwed up and was trying to fix it. On a Thursday in late December, he was reviewing load calculations when Claire's truck pulled up outside. He watched through the window as she sat there, engine running, breath visible in the cold. Then she turned off the truck, got out, walked to his door, knocked. He opened it. "Your barn is warmer than mine," she said. "My heating died this morning. Repair guy can't come until tomorrow." "Come in." She entered slowly, carefully, like someone navigating unfamiliar territory. Looked around at his workspace, the organized files, the calculations spread across tables, the coffee maker gleaming in the corner. "You're still working on it," she observed. "The building doesn't care about my legal troubles. The math still needs solving." She picked up his latest foundation redesign, studied it with professional attention. "Column B7 is better." "You taught me." She set down the drawings, looked at him directly. "I lost the Bangor retrofit project," she said. "The client cited media attention, said they needed to maintain professional distance." Her voice was level, but he heard the cost underneath. "The Portland residential tower pulled out too. Same reason." "I'm sorry." "Are you? Or are you just sorry you got caught?" Fair question. Deserved. "I'm sorry I built structures on foundations that couldn't hold. I'm sorry I valued speed over safety. I'm sorry I silenced you when you tried to stop a disaster." He paused. "And I'm sorry that my attempt to make it right hurt you again. That's the part I can't." His voice caught. "I seem to only know how to damage things." Claire sat down on his second drafting stool, was quiet for a long moment. "Lucy asked me if you were coming back." "What did you tell her?" "That I didn't know. That you might have to go to prison. That the world is complicated and adults make mistakes and sometimes there's no clear path forward." "What did she say?" "She asked if you loved us." The word "us" hung in the air like a structure bearing unexpected weight. "What did you tell her?" "I said I thought maybe you did, but we had to see if you meant it." Claire looked at him. "So, did you mean it? The resignation, the disclosure, all of it?" "Yes." "Even though it cost you everything?" "Especially because it cost everything. Otherwise it wouldn't mean anything." She smiled slightly. Sad, but real. "I brought project files," she said. "If your heating works and your coffee's decent, maybe we can salvage some work. The Brunswick Library wants to expand. Community Center in Bath needs structural review." She paused. "Small projects, nothing glamorous, but honest work." "That's all I want anymore." "Liar. You want to build towers that touch clouds. You want your name on buildings that last generations." She leaned forward. "But maybe you're learning there's honor in small things too." "I'm trying." Trying's the important part. She pulled blueprints from her bag, spread them across his table. "Let's work," she said. And they did. For 3 hours, they reviewed structural calculations and code requirements and the honest mathematics of buildings designed to serve communities instead of skylines. Claire's red pencil moved with familiar precision. Ethan's questions got better, more specific, informed by months of relearning his craft. At 9 p.m., she rolled up the blueprints. "Same time tomorrow?" she asked. It wasn't quite trust, not yet. But it was connection. And connection, Ethan thought, was what buildings were supposed to enable. "I'll have coffee ready," he said. She paused at the door, looked back. "Ethan, thank you. For the disclosure. For changing the story. It didn't fix everything, but she trailed off. It helped. It was the least I could do. No, the least you could do was nothing. What you did was hard. She smiled slightly. See you tomorrow. The door closed softly behind her. Ethan stood in his warm barn, surrounded by honest work, and felt something unfamiliar. Hope. Not the desperate kind from weeks ago. Something quieter, more durable. The kind built on foundations that might actually hold. Winter deepened. They fell into rhythm. Claire would arrive at 7 p.m. with project files and questions. They'd work until midnight or later, reviewing calculations and debating solutions. Sometimes Lucy came along, doing homework at the corner desk Ethan had set up for her, occasionally asking engineering questions that made him reach for reference books. "Why can't you make bridges out of glass?" she asked one night. "You could," Claire answered, "but glass is strong in compression, weak in tension. Bridges need materials that can handle both." "What about diamond? Diamond's really hard." "Hardness isn't strength. Diamond's brittle. It would shatter under dynamic loads." Lucy nodded seriously, added this to her engineering notebook in careful script. Their partnership began with friction. Two people who spoke the same language but in different dialects. Her caution clashed with his residual instinct for scale. She redlined his library expansion designs. Too much glass, too little thermal mass, mechanical systems overcomplicated for the space. "You're still designing for people who'll see it from highways," she wrote in red pencil. "These users will touch the door handles every day. Make those matter." He revised. She revised his revisions. Slowly, the building became something neither would have designed alone. Claire's structural honesty married to his spatial vision, stripped of ego. In January, they won the Brunswick contract. The night they got the email, Claire brought champagne. Real champagne, not the cheap stuff. "To honest work," she said, raising her plastic cup. "To second chances," Ethan added. "To trying," Lucy said, joining with apple juice. They clinked cups in the barn that had become their shared office, surrounded by blueprints for buildings that would serve rather than impress. Outside, January snow fell on coastal Maine. Inside, something was being built that might actually last. February brought a storm that knocked power out across Wellsport. Claire and Ethan were working in the barn when the lights died. Laptop batteries would last maybe 2 hours. The furnace shut down immediately. "Flashlight in the tool drawer," Claire said, not looking up from her permit applications. Ethan found it. Industrial maglite, heavy as a weapon. Clicked it on. The beam cut through darkness, caught dust and warmth. They worked by lantern light and laptop glow until his battery hit 5%. "We should call it," Claire said. "Yeah." Neither moved. Rain hammered the roof. Wind screamed through gaps they hadn't sealed. Claire wore 2 flannels and fingerless gloves, breath visible. The flashlight sat between them like a barrier or a bridge. "Thank you," Ethan said. "For what?" "For letting me try." Claire looked up. Her face in lantern light looked younger, less guarded. "You know this doesn't erase what happened. I know. And if you hurt Lucy, I won't." The flashlight flickered. They both reached for it simultaneously. Their fingers touched. Neither pulled back. "Claire." Her name sat in his mouth like a question. She stood, didn't step away, didn't step closer. "This is complicated," she said. "Everything worth building is complicated." She laughed, surprised. "Did you really just compare us to a construction project?" Bad analogy? Terrible. But she was smiling. The flashlight fell forgotten to the desk. Ethan moved first, one step, then hesitated. Years of damage couldn't be erased by months of work. Trust was a structure that needed proper foundations. Claire closed the distance. Her hand found his collar, pulled him down. The kiss was careful, human, tentative, like engineering a connection between structures built on different foundations, testing if they could bear each other's weight. When they separated, her forehead rested against his shoulder. "This is a terrible idea," she whispered. "Probably. Lucy can't get hurt." "No. And if this is pity or guilt or some billionaire's idea of redemption, it's not." He tilted her face up, held her gaze. "It's you. It's been you since I read your report and understood what integrity looks like in ink." She kissed him again, longer this time, less careful, like someone testing whether a structure could hold more weight than its initial design specified. The lantern guttered and died. They navigated by flashlight and accumulated trust, finding their way through the dark like people who'd learned that good structures adapt to unexpected loads. The storm passed. The power stayed out until morning. They stayed together, sharing warmth and silence and the tentative hope that broken things, properly repaired, might become stronger than they were before. Claire found the proof by accident. Late March, reviewing the document cache Ethan had given city investigators. Thousands of emails, years of communications, buried evidence of a company culture that valued schedule over safety. She was looking for something else, timeline data for the structural analysis, when she found it. Email chain from 3 years ago. Marcus Sterling, Ethan's former CFO, to Meridian's chief engineer. Subject: Foundation specifications. Urgent. Marcus Sterling wrote, "The just safety margin calculations to meet budget constraints. Per Ethan's direction, project completion more critical than structural redundancy. Make the numbers work." Chief engineer responded, "These modifications exceed acceptable risk thresholds. I can't sign off on this." Marcus Sterling replied, "Not your decision. Sign off or we find someone who will." The engineer signed. Dated March 2022, 14 months before the Meridian spire topped out. Claire printed the emails at 11 p.m., hands shaking slightly. Walked to Ethan's barn where light still burned. He was reviewing drawings for the Bath Community Center, coffee cold beside him. She dropped the papers on his desk. "Read." He read, his face drained of color. "I didn't authorize this." "I know." Sterling falsified the approval chain, made it look like I'd signed off on reduced safety margins. "Yes." Ethan read the emails again. "I never saw these." He handled technical approvals during final construction. I was focused on financing, dealing with investors. He stopped. "That's not an excuse." "No." Claire sat across from him, folded her hands like she was presenting a calculation. "If we expose this, it partially exonerates you. Proves you weren't the only one making dangerous decisions. Might reduce your liability significantly." But Sterling has a wife, 3 kids, a grandson born last year." She paused. "He'll face prison time." Ethan read the emails a third time. His hands shook slightly. "People could have died because of these decisions." "Yes." "If I don't expose this, I'm protecting someone who falsified safety reports." "Yes." Claire's voice stayed level, but her eyes were fierce, uncompromising. "I found it. I'm giving you the choice. But I won't be part of covering this up. If you protect Sterling, I walk away. The partnership ends. Everything ends." Wind rattled windows. Ethan's phone showed unread messages, lawyers, board members, people crafting strategies to minimize his exposure. Lucy's bridge drawings stared at him from the corkboard, careful arches labeled load-bearing for connecting things that fell apart. He thought about Sterling. 20 years at Meridian, family photos on his desk, the man who'd sent champagne when Ethan's first tower won awards. Then he thought about Lucy asking, "Trying's the important part," and Claire's voice saying, "Most people don't even try." "We expose it," Ethan said. Relief cracked Claire's composure for half a second. "His family will blame me. And they should." Ethan opened his laptop, began drafting an email to Sarah Chen. "I didn't stop him. I created an environment where cutting corners was rewarded and caution was punished. That's on me." Claire watched him type, didn't interrupt. When he finished, she added her name as co-signatory. "We send it together," she said. "You don't have to, partners." She moved the cursor to send. "Equal work, equal voice, equal risk. You said you'd remember." She hit send before he could argue. The email disappeared into the night, carrying truth that would destroy what remained of Ethan's old life and potentially send Marcus Sterling to prison. Claire took his hand across the desk. "Whatever happens next, we handle it together." "Together," Ethan agreed, and meant it. The press conference was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Manhattan Municipal Building, noon on a Wednesday. Microphones bristling like steel flowers, cameras creating heat. Prosecutors in dark suits explaining charges against Marcus Sterling, falsification of safety documents, criminal negligence, fraud. Ethan stood at the podium. Claire watched on her laptop from Maine, Lucy at school, coffee going cold in her mug. He wore a suit, but it hung differently now, like clothes that belonged to someone else. "5 years ago," he began, voice steady in a way that suggested practice. "Claire Whitmore gave me a report that predicted exactly what happened to the Meridian Spire. I dismissed it. I called her concerns excessive. I prioritized schedule and cost over safety." Claire's fingers tightened on her mug. "I created a company culture where people like Marcus Sterling felt empowered to falsify documents because they understood I valued results over integrity. That culture nearly killed people. Ms. Whitmore lost her career trying to prevent this disaster. I spent 5 years building more towers and counting money." He paused, looked directly into camera. "Claire Whitmore was right about the structure, about the risks, about me." His next words came slower, weighted with something that looked like hard-won truth. "She's the engineer I should have listened to, the voice I should have trusted, the person I should have been." A reporter asked if he expected civil liability. "Yes." "Criminal charges?" "That's up to prosecutors, but I take full responsibility." "Was he in contact with Whitmore?" "That's her business, not mine." The city prosecutor added that Claire had been cleared of all fault, had cooperated fully with investigators, had been offered a formal apology from the building commission. The press conference ended. Claire closed her laptop, discovered tears on her face, not sadness, something more complicated. Relief mixed with vindication, mixed with grief for the years they'd both lost. Her phone rang. Ethan's number. "You okay?" she asked. "I will be. You?" "Yeah." Silence on the line that felt like presence. "Thank you," Claire said quietly. "For what?" "For finally building something that matters." That night, Claire drove 4 hours south to Manhattan. She arrived after midnight, found him in a hotel room near City Hall. His penthouse sold weeks ago to pay legal fees. his belongings fitting in 2 suitcases. He answered the door in jeans and an old MIT shirt, surprise and exhaustion fighting across his face. "You drove down?" "I saw the press conference." She stepped inside. The room was generic corporate, beige walls, abstract art, a window view of buildings he used to design. "You called me the voice you should have listened to," she said. "You were. You are." Claire crossed to him, took his hands. They were shaking slightly, adrenaline crash after hours under cameras. "Lucy watched it on her iPad after school. Made me replay the part where you said my name 3 times. Her voice caught. "She asked if this meant you were staying." "What did you tell her?" "That I didn't know. That you might have to go to prison. That the world was complicated and adults make mistakes." Claire squeezed his hands. "Then she asked if you loved us." Ethan pulled her close, his face in her hair. "I do." "I know." Claire lifted her head, kissed him, this man who'd lost everything and found something better. "You finally built something that matters. Today. Standing in front of cameras and choosing truth." She pulled back to meet his eyes. "That's the foundation. Everything else we'll figure out together." They stood in the impersonal hotel room, holding each other while Manhattan hummed outside, the city that made him and broke him and might yet teach him to build spaces where people could actually live. "Come home," Claire said. "Lucy wants to show you her new bridge design. It's for her science fair next month. She's calling it Redemption Arch." Ethan laughed, surprised and genuine. "Subtle." "She's 9. Subtlety comes later." Claire kissed him again. "Pack your things. We have work in the morning. The Brunswick Library wants to expand the children's section." "Partner work?" "The best kind." They left Manhattan before dawn, driving north toward a life measured in modest budgets and honest structures, toward a child who sketched bridges and a future built on what actually holds. Spring turned to summer, summer to fall. The Brunswick Library opened in June, glass doors etched with Lucy's bridge design, reading rooms flooded with northern light, children's section built low enough for small hands to reach every book. At the ribbon cutting, the mayor mentioned integrity-first design. Claire and Ethan stood in back, watching Lucy explore the space with her classmates. "She wants the middle shelf moved lower," Lucy reported afterward, "so kindergartners can reach." They moved the shelf that afternoon. Projects accumulated: a community center in Bath, cottage restorations in Booth Bay Harbor. In October, they registered formally. Caldwell Whitmore Design, LLC, equal partnership, headquarters in a renovated barn in Wellsport, Maine. Their first brochure was clean, honest, photos of completed projects, client testimonials about responsiveness and structural integrity. A mission statement Claire drafted. Building with honesty, designing for endurance, serving communities that trust us with their spaces. No mention of Meridian or Manhattan skylines. They hired 2 junior architects from the University of Maine, paid competitive salaries, established company policy that structural concerns override budget concerns. Always. Lucy sat in on interviews, asked candidates why they wanted to build things. One recent graduate answered, "Because spaces shape how people live. Bad spaces make life harder. Good spaces make connection possible." Lucy nodded approval. They hired him. Investors returned cautiously. First, the Booth Bay Historical Society with $750,000 for cottage restoration. Then, the Portland Community Development Corporation requesting a mixed-use affordable housing proposal. By December, they were interviewing for a third architect position. Claire ran the year-end numbers. Revenue, $3.2 million. Profit margin, healthy. Client satisfaction ratings, perfect. "We're building something that lasts," she said. Ethan looked around their barn office turned firm headquarters, at the walls covered in drawings showing honest structures, at Lucy's bridge sketches that had started it all. "Something worth building," he agreed. Outside, first snow fell on Wellsport, covering the coast where foundations held firm. In February, Ethan told Claire about the house. They were having coffee on a Tuesday morning, Lucy at school, drawings for the Wellsport Community Library spread across their shared desk. "There's a house for sale on Lighthouse Road," he said. Claire looked up from her red pencil martyr. "Okay." 3 bedrooms, needs work, good bones. "Lots of houses need work. It's 4 blocks from yours, walking distance." Understanding dawned on her face. "So when Lucy needs help with bridge calculations or you need a partner to review proposals, I'm there," Ethan continued. "But separate enough that I'm not—" He searched for words. "I spent years building skylines that nobody lives in. Glass and steel designed to be photographed, not inhabited. I want to build places people can actually live in, including me." He turned his laptop to show her the listing. Cape Cod style, cedar shingles, established garden, asking $385,000. Claire studied the photos. "The roof's shot, foundation needs work, plumbing's probably a disaster." "I know. I'll do it right this time." She smiled. "We should bring Lucy to see it. She'll want to approve the workshop space." "She's 9. She's ambitious." Claire closed the laptop. "Make an offer. But I'm reviewing all structural plans before you renovate, and Lucy gets input on the kitchen tile." "Deal." That weekend, they toured the house together. Lucy immediately claimed the attic for her design studio, pointing out load-bearing walls and natural light angles. Standing in the empty living room with peeling wallpaper and good southern exposure, Ethan watched Claire and Lucy discuss built-in bookshelves and window seat placement. "This works," Lucy pronounced. "But you need to add a ramp to the back porch. Accessibility matters. Mom taught me that." "You're right. I'll add it to the plans." Claire looped her arm through his. "Welcome home." Outside, late winter sun caught melting snow, revealed grass underneath foundations that held through seasons, preparing for growth. Morning light filled the restored barn studio as spring arrived. Blueprints covered the main table, the Wellsport Library in final review, a community center in Camden entering permitting, residential renovation proposals stacked awaiting Monday meetings. Claire reviewed structural calculations at her standing desk, red pencil moving with familiar precision. Lucy sat cross-legged on the floor surrounded by cardboard, glue, and balsa wood, her latest bridge model taking shape. This one, designed to span 18 inches carrying 5 pounds, her notes calculating stress distribution in careful handwriting. "The suspension cables need repositioning," she announced. "The load concentrates wrong at the anchor points." Ethan looked over from his drafting table where he was detailing the library's entrance accessibility ramp. "Want help?" "I want you to check my math after I try it myself first." She adjusted cables, tested with weights, nodded satisfaction when the structure held. Math was right. Outside, harbor sounds drifted through open windows, boats, gulls, the rhythm of a coastal town waking. Claire glanced at her watch. "Town council meeting at 10. We're presenting the library timeline." 20 minutes, Ethan confirmed. Lucy stood, showed them her finished model. "This one's called endurance, because good bridges don't just connect, they last." She was right. They'd learned this together over 2 years measured in honest structures and accumulating trust. Buildings that served people instead of cameras. Projects that mattered to communities. Foundations designed to hold through storms. Caldwell Whitmore Design's reputation was built on that principle: integrity over scale, endurance over spectacle. Claire's name on blueprints carried weight earned through years of being right when others wanted expedient. Ethan's signature beside hers signaled something rebuilt from rubble. Lucy gathered her school bag. "Don't forget, my bridge is in the science fair exhibition tonight, 7 p.m. "We'll be there," Claire promised. After Lucy left for school, they worked in comfortable rhythm, his spatial vision meeting her structural honesty. Every calculation double-checked, every decision weighed against how it served the people who'd inhabit these spaces. Around them, the barn held history, where stubbornness first stood commitment, where partnership replaced penance, where a flashlight-lit kiss started something built to last. Through the window, Claire's house sat familiar 400 yards away. Ethan's house on Lighthouse Road waited 3 blocks beyond. Lucy's bridges hung throughout the office, evolution visible, early cardboard attempts becoming sophisticated structural experiments, each one labeled with her core theme: for connecting things that fell apart. At 9:45, they gathered folders, locked the barn, walked together toward Town Hall where another project awaited approval. Behind them, morning sun illuminated blueprints left on the table, honest lines showing spaces designed for humans, structures built with truth, foundations meant to endure. The work continued. The buildings rose. The foundations held. And in a barn on the coast of Maine, 3 people who'd learned that the best structures support weight they never expected, connect what breaks, and make space for what grows, kept building. One honest project at a time.